I'm Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And we're the co-creators of the hit podcast, The Most Haunted City on Earth.
Look, we love ghosts, but we also love true crime. So we here at Haunted City Studios decided to create From One to Wicked.
A true crime podcast with a killer twist. We'll investigate,
discuss,
then rate
the most brutal and devious crimes and the monsters who commit them.
On a scale from 1 to wicked. So sit back and kill some time with us.
And remember, next time you're walking down the street,
you might just be passing a perfect wicked 10. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of From One to Wicked. My name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And today we are going to be discussing the torture of Colleen Stan.
Oh boy.
Or the girl in the box is what this case is usually referred to.
Happening today, the man who served decades in prison for the infamous girl in the box case, Cameron Hooker, will have a court hearing. Back in 1985, Hooker was sentenced to 75 years for kidnapping, raping, and torturing Colleen Stan, confining her in a box as a sex slave for 7 years at his home in Tehama County. Prosecutors want to designate him as a sexually violent predator to prevent him from being released. Today in San Mateo County, a judge is expected to set a date for that trial, which is expected to take 3 weeks.
I know nothing.
I knew nothing either about this until I did some digging. I really don't know how this kind of blew under the radar due to the fact of how insane the story is.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, there are plenty of crazy true crime stories out there, but I'm like, this one deserves way more attention than it gets. But
I was not expecting the torture of Colleen Stan.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it.
I knew nothing about this episode. Like, usually we, kind of go back and forth as to like, oh, let's do this person and all that. But she just pulled this one out of nowhere. And so I was like, all right, we're doing it.
Well, the reason you'll understand why I say the torture, because it was torture.
I mean,
It's torture by like every means of the definition,
Sure.
But let's go ahead and get right on into it, everybody. If you are new here, we do this a little bit differently. So not only are we going to discuss this case, but we are going to also rank it on a scale of from 1 to wicked based off of 5 different categories, which include brutality, premeditation, motive, difficulty of investigation, and body count. And this is also interactive, so we will give our scores at the end, but please do make sure that you leave your score as well in the comments if you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube, and tell us what you would rank this case.
And we'll add it in.
Exactly. All right, everybody. So first off, here's some lovely photos of Colleen.
Okay.
This is what she looked like when all of this went down, so that you can have her face in your mind while we're discussing this, because that makes it more brutal, to be honest.
It sure does.
Yeah. Doesn't she look so sweet?
Yeah, she looks very happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's not about to be.
Oh, God.
So Colleen Stan was born on December 31st, 1956. And she was an American woman who was kidnapped and held as a sex slave by Cameron and Janice Hooker in their Red Bluff, California home for over 7 years between 1977 and 1984.
7 years?
Yeah.
7 years?
Yes. She was
sex slave?
held captive as a sex slave.
Okay.
JT's going to hate this episode.
Oh, my God.
And at Cameron Hooker's trial, Stan's experience was described as unparalleled in FBI history. Wow. Just to tell you how bad this is about to be.
Wow.
So the case was so gruesome that it inspired books, TV shows, and movies.
Okay.
So let's talk about the aforementioned case. So on May 19th, 1977, 20-year-old Colleen Stan was hitchhiking from her home in Eugene, Oregon, to a friend's home in Westwood, California. Remember, everybody, this was the 70s. Hitchhiking was very popular.
That's why it was the serial killer time.
Yeah,
it was the time to be a serial killer if you were going to be one.
Yes. And so she was going to attend a birthday party, which is why she was hitchhiking. Mm-hmm. And she considered herself an expert hitchhiker. And on that day in May, she had already turned down 2 rides. because she didn't feel comfortable getting in the vehicle with those people.
Okay.
So Cameron Hooker was 23 years old, and he kidnapped Colleen after picking her up along Interstate 5 in Red Bluff, California. And Colleen recalled in an interview, the husband looked dirty, like he just got off work. And she reportedly felt confident climbing into the blue van because Cameron's wife, Janice, who was 19 years old, and their baby were in the car. Do you recall this case a little bit?
No, not at all. I didn't understand at first why she jumped in the car with the dirty man, and then I realized why.
Yeah.
So it made sense.
Exactly. Sadly, she had no idea what she was in for. And this is the horrifying story of how Colleen Stan became what is now known as the girl in the box.
Okay.
So Cameron Hooker and his wife Janice Hooker were actively looking for a hitchhiker to kidnap.
What?
Yeah.
They were just like walking around. I mean, they were just driving around looking for hitchhikers?
Yeah.
Like a serial killer couple?
Yeah, like a prowler, as they do. I mean, that's not uncommon, though, because we've talked about other cases in the past where they actively look for hitchhikers because they deem it as the
but
easy way.
a couple with their baby, right? But I guess that's
You'll understand.
That's part of it.
You'll understand the dynamic a little bit more soon. Yeah. It's more so Cameron than anybody.
Okay.
Janice was a little bit just complacent in the situation.
Got you.
But regardless. So they were looking for someone to kidnap. And when they stopped at a gas station, once Colleen was in the car, when they stopped at a gas station along the way, Colleen went to use the restroom. And she recalled in her quote saying, "A voice told me to run and jump out of a window and never look back." But she calmed her fears and went back to the car. Around 20 minutes into the ride, Cameron pulled off the highway, claiming to be interested in investigating some nearby caves. Which is a weird flex, but okay. It was at this point, Colleen said that, in quote, Janice got out of the car and went down to a lake with the baby. They were playing when Cameron got into the back seat and held a knife to my throat. He tied me up and placed a box over my head. She was subsequently locked in a wooden head box that was designed to prevent light, sound, and fresh air from entering. It weighed 20 pounds. And here's a photo of the head box.
Oh my God.
That's from evidence that they showed at trial.
They actually
He constructed
a head box?
Yes. Yeah, he thoroughly planned this out.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's another angle of the head box. Yeah. That on your head. Can you imagine how painful that must have been?
Yeah, God. I mean, oof.
So before all of this, Cameron was a lumber mill worker at Diamond International Lumber Mill, and Janice had reached an agreement that he could capture a slave to take Janice's place because up until that time, Cameron had been using Janice to act out his sexual bondage fantasies.
Oh, I'm starting to understand now.
Yeah.
So the wife, Janice, that's his wife.
Yes.
Is like, okay, do it to somebody else. Just stop doing it to me.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So the rules were that there was to be no penetrative sex with Colleen, according to an agreement, but this later changed.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
And the car eventually drove to a house where Colleen Stan was led downstairs to a cellar and subjected to horrifying forms of torture. And this is Janice and Cameron Hooker. This is the photo of them.
Wow.
And then this is the house that they took her to.
Goodness gracious.
So into the torture. On the first night of her kidnapping, Colleen was strung up by her hands, physically attacked by Cameron through means of beating, electrocution, whipping, and burning.
That was just the first night?
That was the first night.
He wasted no time.
And a mask was used on Colleen, which we have a photo of right here.
No.
Yeah. Which also looks handmade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that same first night, she was then left suspended while the pair, so being Cameron and Janice, had sex below her.
Okay.
Yeah. She's like literally hanging from the rafters and they're just doing that. Like how
That's
bizarre.
So weird.
Yeah. I was terrified, Stan told a magazine called Closer in 2009. Janice watched as Cameron tortured me, and then they had sex in front of me. I was convinced they were going to kill me. I was tied up and put into a wooden box measuring 3 feet by 6 feet for the rest of the night.
Goodness.
And after her kidnapping, Colleen stated that she was tortured and kept locked in a coffin-like box for 23 hours a day until she was given a contract and forced to sign herself into slavery for life in January 1978.
A contract?
Yes, he gave her a contract saying that he is allowed to do all of these things to her as the sex slave.
And what, if she doesn't sign it, she's dead?
Probably.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about some of the measures he took to instill fear into her, besides just the normal bizarre behaviors he had. But this is the box that she would spend 7 years in.
Wait, she doesn't leave the box?
She's in the box for 23 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then he takes her out for an hour.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so she has to stay in this box for 23 out of 24 hours a day. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So, in view from the box, propped up against her was her purse under the bed, because the box was located under their bed. And there was a photo of Marie Elizabeth Spanhake, a previous victim whose body was never found. So they kept a photo at the last victim.
So they've already killed somebody.
Yes. Yeah.
Yo.
And they left a photo of her for Colleen.
Wow.
Yeah. She further stated that Cameron led her to believe that she was being watched by a large, powerful organization called The Company, which is how he had control over her, basically. Cameron claimed that he was a member of a satanic organization called The Company, and she was told that The Company was a powerful organization who watched over her and had her family's home bugged, which would mean that she would be painfully tortured if her and her family, or her and her family would be tortured if she tried to escape.
Okay.
And so Colleen would say, he told me I'd be nailed to a cross and left for days. And by then I was so broken, I believed him.
For me, this house is kind of a house of horror.
She's the kidnap victim once known as the girl in the box, imprisoned for 7 years in a wooden crate.
I did think I was gonna die. I was terribly claustrophobic. I was having such a hard time breathing.
Colleen Stan was 20 years old when she was picked up while hitchhiking in California by a man and his wife. A scene depicted in a new movie called Girl in the Box, airing Saturday on Lifetime.
So what's your name?
Colleen.
Colleen. Nice. Hi, Colleen.
Colleen says she was driven to this house. Sometimes she had this appalling device locked over her head. Other times she was held for 23 hours a day in the coffin.
I just cried. I just cried out to God for his help and just said, please. I just felt so broken and so violated.
Colleen's abductor was a lumber mill worker, Cameron Hooker.
Cameron was torturing me one time. He had me hanging up suspended in the basement. And he came up next to me and he said, go ahead and scream, I'll cut your vocal cords, I've done it before.
After 7 years captivity, Colleen escaped from the clutches of her abductor. He was found guilty of kidnapping and rape and sentenced to 100 years. His wife was never prosecuted because she helped Colleen escape and also agreed to testify against her husband. Colleen says she has now rebuilt her life.
And now that so many years have passed, it's kind of like it was a whole nother lifetime, you know? And this is my new life.
Colleen subsequently became a slave, referred to as K, just the letter K, and was forced to call Cameron master and was not allowed to talk without permission. And Cameron reportedly wanted Colleen to be like the female character in the 1954 French erotic novel Story of O, and soon started orally raping her. I know, you're like, this is great. What a riveting story.
Lord.
I know. It's pretty brutal, y'all.
It's brutal.
Cameron did not want to have vaginal sex with Colleen because he considered that to be a breach of his agreement with his wife.
Wow, he has morals.
I know,
y'all.
he has standards, everybody. Oh my God. Instead, he raped her vaginally and anally with implements. Following this, the Hooker family moved to a mobile home in Red Bluff.
They moved with her?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
They moved to a mobile home in Red Bluff with Colleen, where she was kept locked in wooden boxes under the couple's waterbed.
Under the couple's waterbed?
Yes.
And she was kept there? Mm-hmm. Like under the bed?
Yes, in the box.
In the box?
Yes.
What the
And this was the mobile home.
And no one can hear her scream or... I mean, that's a tin can.
Right. No.
Like, no?
No. She was under such belief that there was
they
this
probably...
like sex trafficking organizations that was going to harm her family if she did
She's not gonna
anything.
scream.
Exactly. And in 1978, Janice, the wife, gave birth to a second child on the waterbed above Colleen.
Okay.
She gave birth.
That's actually not the most insane thing I've heard. So I'm like, all right, heard.
But just like,
No.
I can't even imagine. But Colleen said that her
Headbox is...
it's pretty brutal.
The headbox is probably number one right now.
I mean, it's hard to rank all of the brutal things.
Yeah,
that
just
they-
box in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colleen said that her faith in God and belief in a chance of escape helped her survive. Her greatest fear, which Cameron reinforced daily, was of the company. To avoid painful punishments, Colleen tried to comply with his commands, which later led to her being allowed to go out to jog, work in the yard, and care for the family's children in the mobile home. And help him build bigger accommodations like an underground dungeon for more slaves.
So she's allowed out of like the box under the bed.
Yes.
At certain times.
At certain times. But just think about that. You are torturing a woman and you have her there against her will and you're forcing her to take care of your children.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that. So even with an open door, neighbors, and a telephone, she made no attempt to escape as, according to Colleen, her fear of the company kept her from seeking help. Additionally, Colleen was allowed to visit her family by herself in 1981, but did not reveal her situation due to her fear of the possible consequences.
Wow.
Like, he had her fully brainwashed, like so broken that he knew that, though. And her family thought she was involved in a cult because of her homemade clothes, lack of money, and absence of communications over the years. They did not want to pressure her, fearing she would stay away forever. But the next day after this visitation, Colleen returned for a second visit with Cameron, and he was posing as her fiance.
Wow.
And he was there mostly to make sure that she didn't say anything. At the trial, Colleen explained that she was happy about visiting her family, who were therefore able to take a photo of her and Cameron happily smiling together. This is the photo.
Okay.
Disturbing, right?
Yeah, very.
And according to Colleen, Cameron feared he had given his slave too much freedom and took her back to his mobile home, where he locked her in the wooden box under his waterbed, and she remained in the box 23 hours a day for the next 3 years.
3 years?
This all went over for 7 years.
I know. I just, okay. Wow.
Yeah. She dealt with bodily functions using a bedpan, which she positioned with her feet, and ate scraps of food. It was stated in court that the Hooker family's children were told Kay had gone home, aka they put her in the box. However, once his children had gone to bed, Cameron would take Colleen out of the box to feed and torture her. Now,
Wow.
Yeah, it
Sounds like hell.
It does. So then the escape happens. It wasn't until 1983 that Colleen was reintroduced to the children and neighbors. She was also allowed to get a job as a maid at a motel. Cameron wanted Colleen to become his second wife, which was a turning point for Janice. Janice confessed that starting with their first date, she had also been tortured, brainwashed, and referred to as a whore over the years by Cameron. Janice further stated that she survived their relationship by engaging in denial and compartmentalization. And by August of 1984, Janice began struggling with herself and the guilt of the situation and went to Colleen to inform her that Cameron was not part of the company and that it was made up. She then helped Colleen escape.
Goodness.
In a televised interview for The Girl in the Box, Colleen told the interviewer that she then went to a bus station and phoned Cameron to inform him that she was leaving him and that he reacted by bursting into tears. Colleen subsequently caught a bus home. And in the months that followed, she did not contact the police, but continued to call Cameron regularly. She explained this at the trial by saying that she wanted to give Cameron, at Janice's request, a chance to reform. 3 months later, though, Janice reported her husband to the police.
Good job, Janice.
Mm-hmm. And that is...
What a freak.
Yeah, that's Cameron Hooker in handcuffs.
He's a freak.
He's a freak. He's just so demented.
Yeah.
In so many ways. She informed Lieutenant Jerry Brown of the Red Bluff police that Cameron had previously kidnapped, tortured, and murdered 19-year-old Marie Elizabeth Spanhake, who had disappeared on January 31st of 1976 from Chico, California. According to Janice, Marie was walking home when she and Cameron picked her up before driving her to their home, where she was hung from her wrists in the basement, undressed, and tortured for an entire day. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Marie was then shot in the stomach with a pellet gun and strangled by Cameron. The couple then wrapped Marie's body in blankets and buried her in a shallow grave near Lassen Volcanic National Park. And authorities were unable to locate any remains. Due to the lack of physical proof, no murder charge was brought, which is just absolutely unbelievable. I know. And Chris Hatcher, a forensic psychologist and criminal profiler, testified for Cameron's prosecution at the start of the 1985 trial, and Janice testified against her husband in exchange for full immunity. And in the end, Cameron was sentenced to consecutive prison terms totaling 104 years for sexual assaults, kidnapping, and using a knife in the process. At his sentencing hearing, the judge noted Cameron was, in quote, the most dangerous psychopath I have ever encountered.
Yeah, absolutely.
And originally ineligible for parole until 2023, which first off, how in the hell was he ever given an option to have parole?
Exactly.
So he had his parole hearing date moved up 7 years to 2015 by California's elderly parole program. Mm-hmm. And on April 16, 2015, his request for parole was denied, and Cameron will be eligible for another hearing in 2030. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, California officials contacted Colleen and advised her that they were looking into possibly granting Cameron Hooker parole in March of 2021. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why are we even considering this? This man needs to rot. Like,
I mean, he needs the death penalty is what he needs.
And instead of a parole hearing, Hooker was evaluated by a state hospital and was subsequently classified as a sexually violent predator. And according to the Tehama County District Attorney's Office, Cameron was released on parole in 2021 to the Department of State Hospitals. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. So disturbing.
He was released on parole?
Yeah, but he's released to a hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Why? Because maybe he was like dying?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But to wrap it up, though, Colleen, in an interview, and this is her recently.
Okay.
So nowadays.
She's looking great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And after the trial, Colleen Stan suffered chronic back and shoulder pain as a result of her confinement. And when she returned home, she received extensive therapy and eventually married and had a daughter of her own.
It's a tough woman.
She's tough. That's so
tough.
brutal. Yeah, I mean, she was able to actually get her life back, which is great. Mm-hmm. But Colleen studied for an accounting degree, and as reported by Mara Bovson in a March 9th, 2014 New York Daily News article, It said, tried to move on to a normal life, but misery followed her. A string of failed marriages and a troubled child who is now in jail.
Jeez.
Yeah. And Colleen also joined and volunteered for Reading Women's Refuge Center, an organization to help abused women. Janice reverted to her maiden name, so Lashley, and became a registered associate social worker and has worked as a mental health professional. So Janice got to have a life as well now that fuckwad's out of the picture. But Colleen has changed her last name, but Janice and Colleen continue to live in California. However, they do not communicate with one another. And that is the story of...
Well, goodness gracious.
It is short but mighty.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
Yeah. Goodness gracious. Okay. So I am taking body count out because obviously...
Yeah.
Like there's one person. Well, there's multiple people. Janice and probably even his kid, suffering here. But I'm just going off of Colleen, what we've heard. So I'm gonna give him a 10 for brutality because obviously, I mean, this person is an extremely dangerous psychopath, and the things that he did to her were just unbelievable. Premeditation, I'm giving him a 9 because on the pickup day, he didn't have her necessarily targeted. Like he wasn't like, I want this person, I'm going to find out where she is. He saw her hitchhiking and was like, I'm going to get her, but also had it premeditated with the box over the head and all of that stuff. So I'm giving him a 9, just 1.4, not already knowing his target. And then difficulty of investigation, he kind of had, he let her out, which I think was a risk for him. And after the crime was acknowledged by law enforcement, I don't think the investigation was very difficult. However, he did brainwash her into when she was free, not saying things. So I did bump it up a little bit for that. And then motive, I'm giving him a 10 because his motive was unbelievably clear. He's a control. So clear. He's a control freak, narcissist, psychopath, classic Bundy type. And yeah, the motive was very clear. So I got a 10, 9, 7, and a 10.
Yeah, I gave it 10s across the board except for difficulty of investigation, which I gave it a 6 because I do agree. The reason why it's a 6 is because he was able to pull this off for so long. And he had manipulated the situation to keep it that way. But investigating wise, I mean, once Janice told the police, it was very well documented. I mean, the fact that I'm able to find all of these photos is incredible. To show he was so narcissistic that you could tell he didn't think he was ever going to get caught for this.
Yeah.
The fact that he kept to the box and they were able to have it for evidence. The fact that he kept the face mask, that he kept the head box. If anything,
and I don't blame Janice for this at all because you're right. Like
she was in a lot of ways a victim as well.
Exactly. No, she was 100% a victim for sure. Yeah.
And mind you, she was only 19 years old when they kidnapped her. So it's like, he probably saw that, even though he was only 23, it was, he probably saw that as like, I can take advantage of this girl.
Yeah.
And
what he did was taking a life in a way that not a lot of people do. Right. So you could take a life in 3 ways. You could kill somebody. You could assault somebody to the point where they can't be a normal person anymore. And then you can actually keep somebody and take their life that way. And that's what he did. And that's the rarest one out of the 3. So.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a bizarre case. And
his final score is a 9.
I think that's pretty accurate. And the fact that they let him go to a a hospital on parole is just mind-boggling to me. I'm like, in my head at least, I don't care how depraved you think he is. He needs to be behind bars. Like, he's a very, very dangerous individual who could hurt other patients. I don't know what his situation is looking like in this hospital.
I mean,
but he could hurt other people.
If he's dead.
I don't believe he is dead.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a brutal case. And that's why I say I feel like people don't cover it because it is a fairly condensed case. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry of everything. And so I feel like people don't cover it for that reason. But nonetheless, it is one of the more disturbing cases I've read in a while, personally.
He's still alive.
I would assume so.
Crazy.
Yeah. Would you agree, though? This is probably one of the more disturbing cases.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, absolutely. It's mega disturbing.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And yeah, I mean, that's all I really can say about it. I think a 9 is very fair. So y'all let us know what you would rank Cameron Hooker on this case in particular. And if you would like to recommend any other criminals or cases that you would like to hear us rank, please leave those in the comments below. Obviously, JT and I can go all day long of talking about different cases that we find interesting, but of course, it is about y'all. So if you have a particular instance that you want to hear, let us know. But other than that, y'all, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you go watch something a little bit happier after this. Just, a little bit of ease after this. But with that, though, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm JT Timmons.
And don't forget, next time you're walking down the street, you might just be passing a perfect 10.